out here on
Last time on Super Adventure.
Boulevard.
And it looks like it's in a really nice area, at least. Are they serious? People are asking $700,000 for these stupid Plymouth Barracudas. I don't have faith that the owner of a Datsun is going to have invested the amount of money that it would cost to have a car like that professionally sprayed. I think they're ugly. If you disagree, there it is. You tell me. Hello, viewers, and welcome to part 2 of Is it possible to buy a classic car for less than $10,000 or I think it was 7,468 pounds sterling challenge. Part 2. So I've been doing a lot of shopping and I've still gone back and looked at some of the cars that I looked at in the first recording, and a couple of them I'm still interested in. And then I found some new ones. I actually came very close to bidding on a car that I didn't look at on the video, but I'll show you in a minute. And I missed it, and it sold in 2 days. So all the stuff you've been hearing about the real estate market being completely crazy and not being able to get a new car unless you pay over asking and that sort of stuff is apparently true even with old AMCs. Go figure. Yeah, you used to be able to you couldn't even give a Gremlin away 30 years ago. Now, now it's kind of crazy. So what I wanted to do here is I want to get recording again. So let's see here. And first up, what I've got here is this is an AMC Eagle, another Eagle. The one that was for sale before that I looked at, that silver one, I don't know if that sold or not. They had a reserve on it, and it was surprisingly high given the fact that it had 200,000 miles on it. And this one here is a 1981, a year that you don't often see with Eagles. And it's a sedan, a two-door sedan. So, yeah, these are really kind of hard to find. And it's got the hood ornament on it and the original wheels. I've been looking at this car for a couple of days, and it has brand new tires on the back, it looks like, too. I don't know what size tires those are, but yeah, that looks pretty good, this car. And I do like this kind of a lot, and I said I wanted an Eagle sedan. I've been interested in one. Again, I'm being stupidly picky, but I still feel like a four-door would be better, but I do love how this looks. Except there are some issues. First among them is that this car is somebody's resto. It isn't an original car. It isn't a miracle. Somebody didn't just take really good care of this car for 40 years and then it looks like that. No, they've completely restored it. It's been sprayed. Yes. And it has a new engine in it. And it does say down here that it is a 4.2. So it is the 258 engine that I was talking about, which is the engine in most Eagles. There's a couple other engines that were actually offered in the early days like this. I know that an old car is going to have to have been restored at some point, but this isn't a kind of car that was ever an expensive car, and it's not the kind of thing that people would spend money on. So when someone restores something like this, I sort of feel like, okay, they had to have done it on the cheap because it's a cheap car. I mean, it's not an expensive car, and they're selling it fairly cheaply. It's well under the budget. Yeah, it's a vinyl roof, yeah, but it's only vinyl on the back half. What do they call that? There's a name for that on antique cars. Is it Landau? Is it Landau roof? That's a very odd thing to see. You don't see that anymore. The Eagle sedan was only built, the two-door sedan was only built until 82. It was only offered in the first 3 years of production. And they said this one is one of 2,300 that were sold with that body style. So nobody wanted the two-door sedan, so they just stopped making it. So this is a rare bird, and I am very intrigued. So I have asked the seller a question. I am thinking about making an offer on it. Most likely, by the time I've uploaded this video, I don't want any competition, so I will have already made up my mind by the time you see this. So you'll have to wait for the next video to see whether or not I actually pull the trigger. But yes, so that is a car I'm thinking about. So there's that. Just in case we're really desperate, there's there's this, which is this is what happens after the Eagle has been retired. My old car, the one I originally had, probably ended up like this. I actually think it got crushed, but it's got 3 of the wheels, and it looks like it's been sitting for a long, long, long time. I wish him luck, though. I mean, I hope somebody does buy that car and lovingly restore it. Back over on Hemmings, I noticed that Datsun that I had kind of like, I was very interested in that car. I did find it interesting. I assumed they were going to ask like a lot of money for it, but as it turns out, it is actually within budget. It's $10,000. He's got $10,450 on it here, and given that it's been for sale for more than a month, I bet you I could at least get him under $10,000. I could certainly get that for budget. I think Datsuns for me are like nostalgia. It's just, they were the cars that I noticed more than other just Japanese imports at the time. I think it's because they just had better styling. I mean, it's better than a Toyota. And they usually were kind of a crappy car, but so were Gremlins. I mean, okay, I like crappy cars. It's just... Speaking of 1970s Japanese cars, there is this Toyota Celica GT liftback. Liftback was a big thing in the late 70s. Just as I was saying that Toyotas weren't as stylish as Datsuns, well, I forgot about the Celica. There actually is a person who lives, I don't think they live in this building, but it's a friend of somebody who lives in this building, and it's an older lady who has a 1976 Celica that she sometimes parks out in the parking lot, and it is all stock. It's a 40-some-year-old car that has never been restored, and I think I have some pictures of it that they'll show if I find them, and it looks exactly like this car, except it's not in anywhere near as good condition, of course. And it is actually a really cool car. And the thing that I love about this car, just like with the Datsuns, I think, honestly, is how it looks from the back. That's just a really, really good styling job. It's like a Mustang. It looks like a Mustang, and it's actually better looking than a 77 Mustang, I think. It is a really nice car. It has kind of a big, huge steel bumper sticking out, which is kind of a bit awkward. But the engine, it's a 4. What size engine do these have? 2.2? 96 horsepower? Well, how did they get so few horsepowers out of something that looks like that? This is a nice little car. I'm not interested in this car. I'm not going to buy this car or offer on it or anything. It is out of budget. Only just. It's $15,000, but it says reserve not met. Well, okay, so I guess it is way out of budget. But I just wanted to show that just as an example. So I remember from last time that I looked at Austin's, and the Austin 1300 GT is still here. It's still for sale. And that's another car I'm really interested in. I should buy this car. Given my history of all the cars I've been interested in since I was a teenager, I know it's kind of completely dorky and hopeless that this is the kind of car I would have liked as a kid, but it just is. It's just how it happened. So I like that a lot, and it's very interesting how it's in an antique shop. But the problem with this is, well, it's a little outside of budget. I could stretch it, I suppose, but the problem with these kinds of cars, and the fact that I live in a condo, I don't really live in a house, I don't have a garage, is if it's a garage kept car, it's fine to buy a really small underpowered car. But in the city, a small underpowered car is just a small underpowered car. And speaking of slow and underpowered cars, yeah, we have the ultimate slow and underpowered car that I am actually surprised it's here. So, come on. I can't scroll fast enough, honestly. I don't know. There is an actual Trabant here on Hemmings. They have it under Sachsenring, since I suppose that was just what used to be the official name of the factory that built the Trabant in Zwickau. So we have a Trabant, and it says 1964. This is not a 1964 car, so just hit the highlights. This is probably, if it has the two-stroke, it is probably a 1988 or 89 Trabant Universal, which is the station wagon version. And the color is perfect. Everything's perfect about it. I very badly want this car. And the only thing holding me back from buying it is fear of driving it. That's it. That's the only reason. Like, I found this car the other day and very nearly just clicked buy, because I have loved Trabant. It's probably my favorite car in the world. I don't know what it is about it. It might just be that I was 12 or 13 when the wall came down, and these were everywhere. Like, they were all over they were on the news. They were in all kinds of TV shows. They were in a famous music video. U2 has them in a music video. I mean, so I guess it could just be my age, coming of age of where I was, and the significance of the Trabant for a couple of years, for this short time period when everything opened up and the wall came down. The Trabant was a kind of a symbol of, it's not the same as the Volkswagen Beetle is a symbol of a generation, even though it came from Hitler. But the Trabant is a little bit different than that. It didn't get that hippie status. I think it's just because it was too late for all of that. People were buying, technological and fast cars, and they weren't buying these. But it's a two-cylinder engine. It's 594 cc and maybe 25 horsepower, probably less. So, but this one's not running. That's one of the reasons why it's so cheap. I think that the other reason, honestly, is because nobody wants to drive this on U.S. roads in 2022. And I can't think of any other reason. I feel like the only time that you could really safely drive a car like this would be very early in the morning, like on Sunday, or very late in the evening on Sunday, and that's it. Like, I would be too dangerous and insecure otherwise. But if you're watching this video and you're in the U.S. and you like some of the German mini cars that I do, there it is. Now's your chance. This is it. I mean, it's not a lot of these in America, and especially from this late, they're usually not in this kind of condition. So yeah, I'm putting it here. I really normally wouldn't, because I just don't want anyone to grab it from under me. Honestly, I think my parents will kill me if I buy this car, or somebody will, running into the rear end in it. But if that wasn't the case, like if that wasn't something that I was worried about, I absolutely would buy this car. I wouldn't even hesitate, especially with how cheap it is. That's a fine price, and it's well and within budget, even including shipping. It's down to a contest between this and the Eagle, really. And this should win. It should. Even if I can hardly drive it, so what? I mean, it's got a trailer hitch. What are you going to tow with 25 horsepower? So Chrysler's for less than $12,000, and yes, that New Yorker is still there. I do like that car, and that's a car there's another fear that I have, which is of it being stolen. But that's not a reason to not buy a car. I mean, that's really not a very good reason. So that's not why I'm not buying it. It's actually just because I don't know if that's me. That's kind of the thing, you know. I have to picture myself in the car. And then there's a 65 Newport, and that's actually really nice. I mean, that's the same thing as an Imperial. That is pretty much an Imperial. But a 1965 car, if I get a 1965 car, I'm going to have to get some black frame glasses with the thing that I'm going to have to get like some 60s attire if I'm going to drive a car like this. And I'm going to have to say swell a lot and things like that. That is a very good car. I like that a lot. 48,000 says it's got a 383 in it. That's That's pretty good. And it's very 60s. It's very American 60s. American 60s cars were, they all, it was all about space age. And so you may think, well, space, how is this huge car? Well, space has two meanings, right? Space inside the car, and that it looks like a flying saucer. Because if you look at it carefully, it does. It's a flying saucer. It's very horizontal, and then there's like a pod in the middle where the people go, which is, there's a lot of glass. That's modernism for you. You can see all around you. It's very low to the ground and very sleek. So that shouldn't be a possibility because of just the era that it's from. American cars from that era I generally don't look at, but I like Chryslers. Here's a 74 New Yorker. I think I had made a comment that I wanted an earlier. And I'll be honest, I actually like the 78 better. I like the pop-up headlamps, and these they're not as, actually, it's not, that's a nice car. Here's the engine. Be worried to work on that. I wouldn't be very confident if anything went wrong with it, especially with all those wires. They're kind of exposed. Let's see what else they got. Oh, I don't really like the navy blue, but I could get over that. That's huge. They're just showing the back seat. Oh, look at the back. Oh, that's another era right there. This car right here so watch my video on cars in New York City. It's basically, I think it says New York City in the video, New York 1974 to 76. It's about the photographer Langdon Clay. It's actually a photograph project that he did that was published about 5 years ago. And it's a huge book. And I look at the book right around, I think it was September of last year, I think in honor of September 11th, New York City thing. And this kind of car is exactly what that book is full of. And I kind of want it just for that reason. Like, those photographs were so good that, like, you just wanted to be there and you wanted to have one of those cars. And this is like one of those cars off the street from that book, except in better condition than any of them were in that book. They were all really trashed. Ask about financing. They have financing. And it's priced at not less than $10,000, but it's in budget. I mean, I could probably talk them down $900. I don't think that'd be that big of a deal. The Monte Carlo. Yeah, my dad would love it if I bought one of those. He wants me to buy a Mustang. I mean, my parents aren't going to like whatever I buy. They're going to hate it. But I do. This car is actually, it's now a possibility. I like that a lot. Let's look at this Monte Carlo. Yeah, the last video, I thought that my dad would like some of the cars I looked at, and he didn't like any of them. Like, none of them. Even though I looked at a ton of American cars, he didn't like anything. So they're just going to hate anything I buy, so I'd forget it. But he actually owned a 73 Monte Carlo when they got married. And I've seen their marriage photo when they got into the car. It had no hubcaps. It was actually a thing back in the 70s. People would steal hubcaps off cars. And this is the car it is. So you can see the kind of style. It's very Chad. What do you say? It's a little bit too leather chaps and cowboy boots for me, and maybe a little bit too Burt Reynolds for me. And that is a nice car. I don't hate it. I don't think it's ugly. But it's cool in a way, just like a Pacer is. This is actually, just to me, look like a stretched Pacer. Look at the seat. That's ridiculous. Like, that's the 70s for you. That's hideous. It's just too much. No thank you. But let's see, how much is it? $20,000. They want $20,000 for that car. And that New Yorker, which is probably, it had 440 in it. What's this got? 350 stock that's Chevy 350, which is, a great engine. That's like one of the best American engines ever made, but not on all their cars. I mean, that old Cutlass we had a 350 in it, and that was a piece of junk. This car is probably got the same power as that New Yorker we just looked at, and doesn't even have as much space, and is really kind of, that front end is a little bit too much for me. But it's twice as much. I can't believe it's twice as much. That's not twice the car. In my mind, this car is very, very close to that New Yorker. It's like the same exact type of thing, except that the New Yorker's a four-door car. And it would be way more comfortable and probably a lot quieter. And yeah, it would be better all around as a classic car to drive and be seen in even. This is just basically the same thing with cowboy boots. And it's twice as much. So we were looking at that Monte Carlo, and that was like almost 20 grand. If I was going to spend 20 grand, which is twice as much as I want to spend, on a classic car, if I was going to spend that on a classic car, this is what I would spend it on. I know it's tiny. I know it has a 2-cylinder engine in it, and it has no power. It probably will barely move more than 30, 50 miles an hour, and yet this car is more desirable in every single way because it is adorable and it's very special, and everybody would love it, and I would love it, and it's like the type of car they have in the lane, and it's absolutely beautiful. You can't, and it's based on a Fiat 500, except even prettier. So I would rather have something pretty than something that's like the kind of thing that Monte Carlo is. That's not really what I wanted. I mean, that's kind of Paul Bunyan, lumberjack. This is, I don't know. When I think of an adjective, I'll let you know. But it's a little bit, it's more stylish and it's pretty. I kind of feel like more people would like it. I would certainly like it more. And I would have bragging rights like you wouldn't believe. I would so enjoy showing pictures of this car every day on Facebook, and people would always like it because look at it. How can you not like that car? It's a wonderful little car. And I'm not surprised at all that it's that expensive. I don't like the dip in the bodywork. Why do they do that? But if they hadn't done that, it would be literally perfect. But then they did that. Okay, that doesn't matter. But yeah, that's just an example. So for things that are really nice, that's something that is really small and little and not very usable, that's very expensive. What about for something that is very big and very nice and yet very cheap? There are things like that, and that's what I was sort of getting at with the Packards that I was looking at. I can't get over how cheap it is, how cheap Packards are. Like this Packard Clipper, 1955, it's a V8 powered car. These are in music videos too. I think there's a famous music video, Janet Jackson. I'm certain it's a Packard that's in the car, that's in the video. And I think it might be a convertible, and I think it's her song Escapade. Not 100% sure, but I could be wrong on that. But when I look at this, I kind of feel like, okay, why are these so cheap? Like, this shouldn't be this cheap. This is and then there's that picture right there is one of the reasons I say these 50s cars don't have a locking differential, so you aren't going to be able to drive it up a steep hill. But the problem is with this kind of car, with something like this, is that the people who lived and breathed for these cars, these 1950s American machines, they are a dying breed. Yeah, it's a car that to them was aspirational. Now it's a super cheap bottom basement price classic that they can't give away. That's tragic when you think about it. The one difference is that you're less likely to get rear-ended in a huge boat like this because look how big it is. I mean, you can't miss it. Look at it. It's a big green monster. But it's just going to be slow, and it's going to break down constantly, and it's going to need a lot of TLC. And this particular car is a Packard 400, which I believe the 400 was the lowest level Packard. I mean, they were a luxury car company. Packards, like they were not a working class car. It wasn't for the pros. It was a manager's car, and so low level managers might be able to afford a Packard 400 back in the 1950s, and this one is not exactly running. $6,000 negotiable, so that means they're willing to go even lower, and that's just sad. It is actually kind of sad. I'm not sad, because the fact that something like this is within reach for me is kind of cool. I mean, I do kind of want this, but I don't know if I can drive it. I'd have to do some work to get it running. I certainly don't need two cars. I mean, it comes with a parts car. I don't think that's going to be feasible. If you're going to sell me a 56 Packard, then give me a 56. I think the 56 is even prettier than these. But I think they do something with the cowling over the lights that comes to a point. It's very pretty. And I do like this, but I don't think I can restore a car. And in either case, if I was going to do that, it would be in a location where I'd have to get it up a very steep hill. And this is not going to go up a steep hill. So it's not possible. But it's something that I thought that my viewers would be interested in looking at. It is, possible to get a car like this for cheap. And so that is the whole point of this video. Can you get a classic car for less than $10,000? Well, yeah, if you're willing to buy something that is a little bit off the beaten path. If you have in your mind the same thing that every boomer has in their mind today, which is, oh, I want a 65 Mustang, oh, I want a 71 Hemi Cuda, or a Volkswagen bus, apparently. Like, if you're going after any of those boomer nostalgia vehicles, you're not going to get it for cheap. You're going to spend tons and tons of money. And everything is overpriced unless it's something that's a little bit less common, which this Packard 400 is a little bit less common nowadays. It's not something that is extremely popular as a classic car anymore, and they can be had for very cheap. So it is possible to get a classic car for less than $10,000. Now all that's left is it possible for me to get a classic car that's interesting, that I want, for less than $10,000? There's a few possibilities. I've sent out a couple of inquiries on some of the cars that I've looked at today. Hopefully in the next installment of this series, I will be showing you the result. But I have to open my wallet, and that don't open easily. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, throw a thumbs up, a like on there, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done that. I hope that you have, and I hope that I can see you soon in another video. Be well and take care. Bye.